My son and I set out to build ourselves a garage on a budget. Now, of course, we wanted it to be as big as we could afford, but our budget was $20,000. That meant if we wanted a garage of any size at all, we were going to have to do all the work ourselves. We have a little bit of building experience, but neither one of us has ever built anything quite this big. So we decided on a post frame garage that's 28 foot by 36 foot by 12 foot tall. Post frame construction is pretty common in the agricultural community, and it can be a lot more affordable than pouring a footer and laying block and framing out a traditional build. We ordered our materials through D&R Metal in Wurtland, Kentucky, and they sourced their materials from Graber Post Buildings out of Indiana. They sell a materials kit that's based on engineered designs that include everything you need right down to the screws and saccharine for the posts. Now, speaking of posts, it seems like in every other one of my videos that I posted about this garage, everybody's really concerned about those posts being in the ground. They say they're going to rot out in a few years and all that kind of stuff, but not only are these laminated treated posts that are rated for 30 years of burial, but I know of several buildings that my dad built in this same method that are still standing strong after 35 years. Now, I'm not saying my posts won't rot, but I've never personally seen it happen. And if they do, there are methods for addressing that and replacing them as well. Now, to me, getting the post set is the most crucial part of the whole build. Everything depends on your post placement and making sure that those posts are square and plumb. But once you get that in place, things really start coming together pretty quickly. Our lumber package came with basic drawings, but we still mixed a few things up and we had to back up. We started hanging LVL as door headers, but quickly realized that didn't make much sense with this type of construction. Those were meant to be the stringers for the trusses to go across the spacing of the door frame. But aside from that little mix-up, we didn't have too many hiccups in our building, and we worked on it nights and weekends for a couple of weeks, and we got it framed out pretty quickly. We did most of this work by just climbing up and down the walls and using ladders where we needed to, but we got by getting the walls framed up with minimal equipment. Now, you might notice it looks like I'm spreading dirt on top of my gravel base, but actually that's creek rock. So once my dump truck driver noticed what I was doing, he suggested he could bring me some creek rock instead of regular gravel, and it would cost me less than half as much money. And this stuff actually packs better than the rock I was using anyway. We went through several dump truck loads of gravel, so this saved me quite a bit of money. I think when all was said and done, we had about 180 ton of gravel hauled in to level the site and finish up the driveway. And once we got our grade set, we just topped it off with some limestone and it dressed up real nice. Now, trusses are the exciting part, but 28-foot trusses by hand with just two inexperienced guys was not easy. The end trusses are the hardest part because you're working on the outside of the structure. We first thought we could hoist it up by hand using a block and tackle, but we quickly figured out that wasn't even close. Next, we tried a ladder on each end. My wife held the rope to keep them from flipping over, and that didn't work either. We finally figured out that we could build a ramp, use our block and tackle to drag them up those ramps, using the Kubota to pull on it, and all that worked out pretty well. So once we had this method figured out, everything went pretty quick. We moved on to the other side, and we got that one set in place, and we were ready to move on with the trusses from the inside. Now, luckily, we had a neighbor who noticed us climbing up and down the walls of the building to put the walls up, and he stopped by and he offered us his scaffolding to put the trusses up, and that was a lifesaver. Now, we had a pretty good method for putting up the trusses. We put a little board on each end. We used those as a hook inside the stringers to hold it in place while we flipped it over with a rope, and then we used a little jig to put over the top of the trusses to hold them in position on our 4-foot centers. Now, this is definitely a rewarding part because it really starts to look like a building quick when you get the trusses on. Now, neither my son or me, either one, are big fans of heights, so we actually put most of the roof on from the scaffolding down below. We were able to spend just as little time as possible up on the roof, and that worked out just fine for both of us. One thing I really love about metal is how quick and easy it is to install. We've got the metal on this building in probably no more than a week's worth of evenings and maybe a Saturday to finish it off. My son was 18 years old when we built this building, and this was a great project for us because we got to work together and he got to learn some more about building and get some experience doing some of these things. And so all in all, this was a fantastic project that left us with a great product that we can use for the rest of our lives now. So we finished up the outside of the building just in time to beat winter and get to some of the inside work. So we had to get our doors put on. We went with DBCI roll-up doors because we didn't want anything overhead taking up the space that was going to be used by our car lift. Now for our electrical service, we went with a 100 amp sub panel with a main installed so that we would have quick access to turn it off inside the garage. We installed a lot of LED lights, plenty of outlets, and several 220 drops so we'd have places to plug in welder, plasma cutter, and air compressors. Now one thing that was really handy for this electrical job was we have our little Kubota BX23S, so we were able to use that backhoe to dig us a trench between the house and the new garage. That made it pretty easy to run the wire and conduit from the house over to the sub panel inside the garage. So once we got the electrical installed, it was time to start doing some insulating. We didn't get to insulate it the way that we wanted to because spray foam insulation is just too expensive for our budget. So we went with a 1/2-inch polyfoam insulation board that we lined the insides with. And it's not the best insulation, but it was affordable and it's better than nothing. So with insulation complete, it was time to start making the final preparations for concrete. We got our scaffolding out of the way, we finished packing it in with the little plate compactor, and we thought of one more thing we needed to do to make preparations for our car lift. We wanted that section of concrete to be deeper. We wanted about 8 inches of concrete in that spot. So we dug out a little pit, that way the concrete would be deeper in the section where the lift was going to be anchored. We used a fiber reinforced concrete, but we also wanted a little bit of rebar reinforcement in that area as well. So we set up some rebar, rolled out the plastic, and got everything ready. And then we recruited some friends to come and help us keep up with the truck. Neither one of us had any experience pouring our own concrete. This was going to be the first time, and we wanted it to turn out at least halfway decent. So we got enough help there to run the wheelbarrows and get the concrete spread and not hold up the truck too long. And the rest of it was kind of up to us. Our neighbor, that good neighbor that loaned us the scaffolding, also had some experience doing concrete, and he had some tools that he loaned to us. And he spent some time over there supervising, kind of telling us what we needed to do when and help us get a decent finish on our concrete. And it's not great, it's not professional, but it definitely gets the job done and saved us several $1,000s. And the other thing that we had to do, because we're rookie concrete finishers, is we poured it in 2 halves. We didn't want it to get away from us, and we knew we weren't in that great a shape, so we figured doing it half at a time would be something that we could maybe keep up with and do a better job of. So once we had the concrete in, it felt like we were almost done, but we had to wait a month for the concrete to cure before we could set up our lift. So we did little things like installing our air compressor and our air lines and getting those plumbed up and set up and ready to go. And then we were ready to install our lift. Installing the lift was probably the most exciting part for both of us because we're both gearheads, but we've never had the experience of working under a lift. So we knew this was going to open up a whole new world of possibilities for us. Installing that lift was not exactly an easy job, and it definitely took 2 people to do it. But it was something we could accomplish, and that saved us a little bit more money. We didn't have to hire somebody to come in and install that. So once we got the lift installed, we were down to the final aspect of the build, and that was getting our floor coating on. And I made the mistake of listening to my son on this one because he thought it was really cool that Adam LZ had white floors in one of his garages. Now I knew we stood no chance of keeping a white floor clean in our garage, but my son had worked hard on this build and he really wanted to see white floors, and so I thought, well, this will be a way he'll learn, he'll see it firsthand, and it doesn't make that much difference to me, so we put down white floors. They looked great for the first 2 days. So guys, I know this build is not anything that's all that impressive. We did it on a budget, and we did it ourselves, so not everything is perfectly professional. But now we have a garage and space to go out and work on our cars and enjoy ourselves, so I couldn't be happier with the overall outcome. We appreciate you all taking the time to watch our garage build. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Y'all have a good day.